there isn't a Geneva Convention equivalent for video games. If there were, we'd like to propose a rule that if a boss is defeated, they stay defeated. When we as players have gone to the trouble of beating a formidable boss, the last thing we want is for that boss to come back either later in the game or in a sequel with upgraded powers and abilities, jonesing for a rematch on more favourable footing. And by more favourable footing, I mean their foot up your ass. For your viewing pleasure, here are 7 upgraded bosses who clearly weren't enough of an asshole the first go around. Enjoy, and beware spoilers for the following games.
Out on the enjoyment of a lifetime. Behold, amazing fantasy! Don't miss the most amazing tag team fighting game ever! Are you ready for a new challenger? Now, experience Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter!
The problem with releasing tons of sequels with the same villain is that that villain gets a little bit less scary every time, which is how you go from nightmarish horror monster Freddy Krueger to novelty rap artist Freddy Krueger. My favourite track is Do the Freddy. It's an issue that Capcom ran into when they released approximately 400 variations of Street Fighter 2. As players became familiar with and improved at the game, final boss M. Bison gradually went from a terrifying, psycho-crushing dictator, ready to shove that health bar of yours somewhere extremely uncomfortable, to just a bloke who dresses a bit like a train driver. Hey, at least he never released a rap album. In order to up the ante for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Capcom included a brand new hidden final boss called Akuma, which is Japanese for demon. If you played particularly well in arcade mode, scoring high and never using a continue, Akuma would glide in and deck Bison, replacing him as the final boss.
Round 1, fight!
Akuma was an enormous headache to deal with, levitating around the screen and throwing out double air fireballs to keep you away, something that none of the other characters could do. He was, without a doubt, the ultimate test of your Street Fighter 2 abilities, and was so mysterious that they didn't even do him a character portrait. Which is a shame, because that means I have nothing to print out and stick on my dartboard. So considering what an absolute nightmare Akuma already was, the last thing he needed was a cybernetic upgrade. And yet that's exactly what he got in Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, the 1997 predecessor to Marvel vs. Capcom, where Street Fighter characters faced off against classic Marvel characters like Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Shuma Gorath? According to Wikipedia, this guy is a godlike ruler of over 100 alternate universes and has the power to destroy galaxies and realities. Weird that he just got the kicked out of him by a guy in bare feet. With your basic Akuma downgraded to a regular playable character, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter's final boss was Cyber Akuma, who could do all the things Akuma could, plus fire energy beams, launch his robotic hand at you on a homing rocket, and hover on a pair of metal demon wings while raining down multiple air fireballs at once. The result is one of the toughest bosses in Capcom fighting game history, and an all-round superfluous upgrade to an already nails-hard foe. I await Cyber Akuma's rap album with great trepidation.
One of Mega Man's most legendary foes, first appearing in Mega Man 7 on the SNES, is Bass, accompanied by his robot wolfy dog thing called Treble. Although, to be fair, the dialogue lines aren't actually voiced, so his name could be Bass, like the fish, and the dog's name could be entirely unrelated. You run into Base, let's go for, at the end of the first level in Mega Man 7, where he pops up as a mini-boss. Defeat him and he tells you he's been trying to stop the evil Dr. Wily. Pretty sure it's pronounced Wily. And when you catch up with Base later in a sort of haunted castle full of zombie robots, a concept we simply don't have time to get into here, it seems like he's still on your side. I sure hope that when I invite him back to Dr. Light's lab for repairs, he doesn't go berserk and is then revealed to actually have been an invention of the evil Dr. Wily. Yes, Base is revealed to actually be evil in what we're describing as a base heel turn, and you just know that you're going to have to fight him again later in the game. What you don't realise is that he's also going to receive a serious upgrade, because he merges with his Robot Wolf Treble to become a much more powerful enemy. Call me crazy, but I think having a wolf strapped to me would reduce my combat effectiveness. Base becomes super Base, and all of a sudden he's rocketing around the place like a poorly secured firework and blasting you with balls of energy, laser beams, and rocket fists. And if you thought that upgrade was bad, Super Base comes back in the next game, Mega Man 8, with even more powers and abilities, this time allowing him to rain down purple plasma from the sky. As a side note, I assume all this stuff is what the Nicki Minaj song is about.
Longtime fans of the series formerly known as Yakuza, now known as Like a Dragon, will remember the Amon clan, a family of deadly assassins who are harder than a Kevlar-coated cryptic crossword. Usually, these Amons will show up in a Yakuza game once you've completed all the game's many sub-stories, as a reward for running around the city doing totally bonkers stuff all day. To this end, they represent the apex of the game's challenge. The hardest enemy in a Yakuza game is always an Amon, and these fights exist to prove your worth as a master of that particular game's combat style. The most recent game in the series, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, is no exception, but the patriarch of the clan, Jo Amon, turns up much earlier than you might be expecting. That's because he's there to draw out Kiryu's Dragon's Resurgence technique, in which Kiryu gets sick of this turn-based combat nonsense and literally smashes the turn-based command menu before wailing on Jo Amon in real time. With that, you might think you're done with Jo Amon for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, but that's where you're wrong, because he's also lurking right at the bottom of the game's formidable Yokohama underground dungeon as the final boss of the entire thing. Now, you've probably leveled up a whole bunch since the last time you faced Jo, and so are feeling pretty confident about taking him on again, a feeling that will evaporate in the third second of the fight when he summons 3 more Amons who are just as bastard hard as he is. And what's worse, they can do team-up attacks, which up until now has been the sole preserve of your squad. I'd say this was very uncool, but they are all wearing sunglasses, so I guess it is kind of cool.
After being defeated, most Mario bosses have the good sense to not show their face again, probably on account of how embarrassing it is to have your ass kicked by someone wearing dungarees. Not so Super Mario Galaxy's King Caliente, a lava octopus with some flashy headgear who hangs out in a volcano-topped UFO on the Octomagma planet. Your first encounter with King Caliente is pretty straightforward in that while he does shoot fireballs at you, he also shoots the only thing that can harm him: coconuts. Gamers with a keen instinct for this kind of thing will realise right away that this is one of those tennis bosses, and a few short volleys later, King Caliente is decrowned. And dethroned. Bye-bye, Octojerk. However, King Caliente isn't the kind of octopus to just roll over. I mean, I imagine it would be harder to do with all those tentacles. Or would it be easier? I'll have to think about it, come back to me. And so you encounter King Caliente again later in the game, this time in Bowser Jr.'s lava reactor, where his time in the lava has given him a noticeably darker hue, as well as a much worse temper. Now King Caliente not only shoots out fireballs, but also sends out hordes of homing lava bubbles. He takes more hits than before. And he even makes it start raining meteors from above. For reasons known only to himself, however, King Caliente does still have access to a ready supply of fresh coconuts, which he will still throw at you despite how that went last time. Perhaps stop spending your entire day inhaling molten rock, okay? I don't think it's doing wonders for your critical thinking skills.
Pete! You here? Just down in some rocket fuel.
How are you drinking?
Very, very carefully. Okay, go time.
Helix 2 en route with heavy payloads.
Copy, Helix 2, we've got you on scope.
There are worse animals to name your supervillain persona around than a rhino. Skunk, I guess. Blobfish. But when your whole deal is being slow and strong and your main adversary is Spider-Man, who's known for being incredibly fast and agile and strong, brother, you may have picked the wrong odd-toed ungulate.
Pick on someone your own size, Rhino.
There is no one my size, punk.
This is made painfully clear in Spider-Man Miles Morales, when rhinoceros-themed supervillain Rhino gets his ass handed to him by Miles early in the game. To be fair though, a lot of this is Miles' fault, as Rhino only escapes after Miles F's up and causes his transport helicopter to crash.
Pull back, Miles. Let me take...
I got this, Pete. Don't worry.
Miles, no!
It's secure.
You're drifting, Helix 2.
We have a weight imbalance.
Before Rhino sets off on a rampage through the city, smashing up a shopping mall and blowing up most of a city block. The resulting confrontation, however, is pretty straightforward on account of Miles discovering his electrical venom punch ability, with devastating results for Rhino. And that should be that, except after the fight, Rhino is picked up by Simon Krieger from the Roxxon Energy Company, who upgrades his armour, specifically making it immune to Miles' venom punch.
You like my new color? Immune to your little zappy pops.
Zappy Pops?
Or, okay, Zappy Pops, as Rhino puts it. Now you've got your work cut out for you, as you've got a much tougher fight on your hands that involves steering Rhino into tanks,
Break his armor!
electrically charging engine blocks,
Dismissed immediately!
and anything else you can think of to weaken his impervious armour until finally you chip enough of it away that you can actually hurt this massive megafauna.
He's punching up! Lay into him!
Just a note here for all hulking, oversized video game bosses, stop running headfirst into things. It'll save you a lot of trouble in the long run.
5 Nights at Freddy's was the game that proved that even adorable bunnies and baby chicks can be made terrifying with a bit of dim lighting and the odd jump scare. Now excuse me while I finish my house of cards. The fact is, basically all of the 5 Nights at Freddy's animatronics are scary enough, but as the 5 Nights series grew in popularity and the sequels stacked up, the developer had to come up with increasingly terrifying designs with increasing numbers of teeth. Might just give it a second. I knew it! 5 Nights at Freddy's 4 is arguably the most frightening game in the entire series. Part of that was because it introduced a whole host of new Nightmare versions of its existing characters, including Nightmare Fredbear, who has a gob full of razor-sharp teeth and the sort of claws that would make nose-picking an extreme sport. Like his fellow animatronics, Nightmare Fredbear stalks you around the family home where the game takes place, and for the first time in the series, you aren't staring at a security monitor, instead moving around the bedroom of a suburban house with a flashlight. But if you thought being able to use your legs would make things any less terrifying, then guess again. As if Nightmare Fredbear wasn't bad enough, as the game progresses to the final night, there's an upgraded version of Nightmare Fredbear, simply called Nightmare, who has dark translucent skin and moves faster and more aggressively than any of the other animatronics in the game. And when he gets you, which he will, he makes a horrible sound like someone screaming through a 28.8 kbps modem. If you look, an MP3 of Metallica from Napster just appeared on your desktop. Also, you're being sued by Metallica. Nightmare returned in the Ultimate Custom Night games, and while this time around we got a better look at him, we're certainly not happy about it. And that is all I have to say about both Nightmare and Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh, come on!
Bosses in SNK fighting games are notoriously difficult, to the point where the term SNK boss syndrome was coined as shorthand for any game with unbelievably cheap and frustrating bosses. And while I'm not sure exactly when that term was coined, I'd be willing to bet good money that it was as a result of Rugal Bernstein from King of Fighters 94. Rugal, a crime lord who looks like Richard Branson if he focused his business entirely on Virgin Active gyms, is a total jerk who owns you with a series of laughably unfair moves like the sensitively named Genocide Cutter, and this thing where he runs you across the entire screen before slamming you into a wall. Maybe through sheer bloody-mindedness and having 4 hands, you were finally able to beat Rugal, at which point you probably thought to yourself, man, I'm glad that's over, surely nothing else will be as bad as that. Well, buckle up folks, because then came the King of Fighters 95, which featured none other than Omega Rugal, who was worse than original Rugal in every conceivable way. Rugal sets the tone by reanimating main character Kyo's dead dad and making them fight each other. Before transforming into his Omega form, which features grey skin, white hair, and 0 shirt. Omega Rugal is all the nightmare that regular Rugal is, and then some, with his moves doing more damage and having higher priority than before, and his specials having super fast cooldowns, meaning he can fire them off pretty much constantly. If you want any more confirmation that Omega Rugal is the SNK boss of all SNK bosses, he's also the final boss of pretty much all the non-canon Dream Match installments of the King of Fighters series. So beloved/hated is he by the developers and the community. Still, I think he needs to work on his trash talk if this is the best he can manage after being defeated. Yeah, you jerks! Strong words there from Omega Rugal.
Thanks for watching. Those were 7 upgraded bosses who clearly weren't enough of an asshole the first time around, so they had to have a second run at it. Thank you for watching. And if I could draw your attention over here, there's a very good video here by outsidexbox, that's us, and another one by here by Luke and Ellen over on Outside Extra. And either one of them will keep your good time YouTube viewing time rolling, so don't let it stop. Keep going, just watch another video. And we'll see you next time, every Thursday on Outside Xbox for another list video. We've never ever missed a week, ever. And next week won't be the first time. All right, I said it. Yeah?